Hi everyone. My name is Grace and I'm in third year HSB Pathology and I'm the academic director of UPAW and I'm here with
Andrea, and I'm the first year rep from first year in Med Sci. And today we're here with Trinity, and she was the UPAW co-pres last year.
hi Trinity. Could you please
Um,
introduce yourself shortly?
yes, so my name's Trinity, and I did my undergrad in the HSP pathology program here at Western. And now I'm currently in my first year in the pathologist assistant program doing my master's.
And could you explain us shortly what a pathologist assistant do and a short description of your role?
Yeah. So essentially, a pathologist assistant will have various responsibilities, but a typical day is usually like 8 to 4, and it could vary, but it's usually like business hours, and you have weekends off. And what you do is in the grossing room, so it's kind of like a lab, in the hospital, and there will be a bunch of different specimens. So there is all varies too. So it's not like you're specializing in different types of grossing. So you'll have to know how to gross like a lung to kidney to uterus, etc. And so every day you're gonna like just be grossing these different specimens. And what I mean by grossing is pretty much like sectioning, cutting them so that you're looking for masses that could be tumors or cancerous, and then you're also just looking for any abnormalities. And sometimes you might know that there's abnormalities present, so you know where to look. Other times it's more of a discovery. And essentially, you send in biopsies to further test, and then sometimes you're taking pictures, etc. So really just processing the organs. And then other days you could be an autopsy. It's not as likely, or it's not as common that PAs are often involved in the autopsy process. But if you're working, like there are chances with just helping with evisceration of the organs. And there's other
Okay,
ones too.
so thank you for that. So the next question is, I know this next question you probably have a really long answer to, but what are the main things that made you want to become a pathologist assistant and take on this role?
Okay, yes. So definitely my undergraduate program really kind of gained some exposure. I gained some exposure through it. And I met with some of the PA students that were in the program during my undergrad. So it was really nice to see how the collaborative environment is in the Western program, especially. And I thought that was really interesting. I just really felt like it aligned with my personal interests. So I really loved anatomy in second year. And I also really do like pathology in general. I kind of always knew I liked pathology. So those two combinations, it really works out in a PA type of career. And so I was able to be fortunate enough to have shadowing experience in my third year. And that really led to me being able to get a little bit of an insight of what they actually do and seeing that hands-on experience. And essentially, I really like the work-life balance in the career. So like I said, it's an 8 to 5 or 8 to 4 kind of job, weekends off. And then on top of that, you're working with a team and you get really close with your team. It's always a great environment. And I think it's just if you're looking for something, a career that will have pathology, anatomy, work-life balance, and overall just like a really good environment to work in and hands-on, this is a really good career to think about.
Yeah, so speaking of your undergrad a little bit, so what does it feel like coming back to Western as a PA, and what's different from now compared to your undergraduate times?
Yes. So it has differed a lot from grad school to undergrad. And I also want to preface this that I believe all grad school is very different in mindset than undergrad is. So bear in mind in undergrad, you're really working on a GPA, you're working to get the highest grades, and it's pretty much like more memorization than understanding or than application, right? And in grad school, they completely change your mind of thinking. Grades don't really matter. You do need to maintain, of course, certain base minimum, but it's like all attainable. what they really stress is understanding, being able to apply that material into essentially like your work, right? So going through just kind of my general courses of what I'm taking this first year. So first year in PA program is all classes as well, but it's very hands-on compared to undergrad was. Undergrad is all just very lecture based and then you're studying it. This is I'm a lot more on campus, in person, doing like hands-on work versus just lectures, right? So in anatomy, we have 6 hours in lab. So that's dissecting. Okay. And then on top of that, we will have 4 hours lectures. And sometimes you're even given video lectures beforehand to watch before going into seminar or sorry, lectures. And then, so that's one class, but that's technically worth 2 credits. So that's really nice because it is in essence a 2 credit worth of coursework, right? So it makes sense that you're doing a lot for it. And then the other courses is infectious diseases, which I want to say is the most similar to an undergraduate course. Like that one is kind of the same. I feel like it's slides, it's lecture, and that's it. And then histology is honestly a really fun course. And it is different than the undergrad one. So this one is we go into the hospital, you have a 2 hour lecture course. First hour is lecture usually. And then the second hour, they'll bring you into the grossing room at the hospital and they'll show you certain specimens that are really interesting. And it's just really cool because you get hands-on experience. You're really in it, right? And so I want to say the main differences with these courses is anatomy. This is where you're really applying your knowledge. This is where they're testing you like bi-weekly, making sure that you just know your stuff and it's all application based and all oral testing. And then, so that's something that was a little bit of a transition. Infectious diseases, I won't touch on too much because that's very much similar to undergrad. And then the histology course is also like pretty hands-on because you're looking at real microscopic slides and you're also in such a small group that it's a little bit more interactive, which I really like. And yeah, so that's that. And then I didn't mention, but you do take Path 3500. If you were in your undergrad and already took that, you get exempted. So that's why I forgot about it. And you just take the quizzes or weekly quizzes, just to coincide and make sure you're still up to date with it, but you don't have to do anything else for that course if you have taken Path 3500. And then you also take the forensics course, which is also an undergraduate course for the second term. And so both those courses are just pretty much your everyday undergrad courses. So with that being said, I was long-winded, but the courses are really, really manageable. I would just say you're on campus a lot more doing things in terms of like dissection, like it's just so hands-on. And it's also like a change in your mindset going into grad school. And this is a general point as well.
Okay, perfect. That sounded amazing. And to kind of continue this topic of like undergrad versus grad school, for
Mhm.
someone like me who's in like first or second year, maybe thinking of going into honors specialization in pathology. So what are the academic subjects or skills do you think are the most important to getting where you are as a pathologist assistant program?
Okay, perfect. So for me personally, like from my HSP to where I am now, I found that it's really important to work collaboratively and learn how to communicate with your peers and be professional. And I know that sounds just very general, but it is honestly a very good point that a lot of people might not think about. Because you're constantly working with these people, right? And it's now not an individual matter. Like, yes, grades are all individual, but it's really nice when you can see that you learn from each other. And so it's good to kind of start early learning from each other, and that'll help you in your undergrad as well. It's like you're going to be at least twice as smart than you are on your own by working with other people, right? So it is really helpful in that case. I think if you want to talk about an individual matter, Something I really took away from my undergrad and what I think has helped me, especially in anatomy, is using flashcards. Um, it's something that honestly makes a huge difference. It's being able to actively recall, and that's like a really great practice for undergrad and grad, especially in grad because you're not only trying to memorize, but you're also like you just have to actively recall it and then know your like way to apply that knowledge. And then I think it's hard because in undergrad they do teach you a lot of just facts and you just regurgitate the facts. So in terms of continuing on with what I took away from undergrad, it would be like any application-based questions that came from undergrad. Those were the most helpful for where I am now. Did that answer the question?
Yes,
Yeah,
great.
that's perfect.
That's amazing. And we only have one more question left for you, but it's
Mhm.
connected to the question before. But
Okay.
for the students who are interested in pursuing to become a pathologist assistant, how do you think they can prepare and start or should start preparing for their career if they want to become a pathologist assistant?
Yes, of course. So I think the most important thing I would stress is, especially for applications that are, I believe, open, is to shadow. Shadowing is so important because it not only helps you when you are applying to be able to have a really fundamental understanding of what the career is, but it also will help you just making sure that you want to do it. And that's like the really important thing about these programs and across all the programs, at least in Canada, it's they want to make sure they're taking in a student that is going to be passionate about this career. It's not like a stepping stone to the next thing that in your life. And like while that still occurs, it's really important that you want this career as the career, not like a stepping stone to med school or something, because this program is not really for that. It's definitely better to do a research-based master's if that's your goal. And so they'll see that in your applications. And by having that shadowing experience, that'll just help you to really know if you're passionate about it and also help you in the essence that they'll ask you questions like, wanting to know if you understand. And so that will get you further into the application process. And so I think that's really important. And honestly, the more shadowing experience doesn't always mean that, or sorry, let me go back. You don't need like a bunch of shadowing experience. I feel like one day in the typical grossing room is what they expect. And then if you can get autopsy, that's great. It's not necessarily required because it is a lot harder to get autopsy shadowing experience. And then on top of that, I would just recommend watching a lot of YouTube videos and then mentioning that, like saying, oh, I did further research to make sure that I had that understanding. Like you don't have to be in person to have that knowledge and to have that kind of visual experience either. So I think those are some pretty key points that I wish I knew going into applications. And I think that'll be helpful for anyone who's looking into that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so that concludes all the questions that we have. Are there any additional comments you want to say or?
If anyone wants to reach out in terms of the application process, I'd be more than happy to just kind of give a little bit of insight into. I mean, I'm pretty sure I touched on all of my feedback or like advice I'd give someone. But yeah, I think that's kind of it. Just make sure you know that you're passionate about it. And if you have any more questions, feel free to contact me, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. I think that's all the questions that we had.